Good evening, I'm Robert Stone. I'm going to call the Underhill special select board meeting. The board today is 7th November. It is Thursday. It is 7 o'clock. We are here to have the select board receive a final transportation scope study.
Sorry, Bob, we can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're on mute.
I'm not.
You're having, there is a lot of back. Can you hear us, Dan? You sound quite faint too.
Brad, you sound perfectly clear. Bob, for whatever reason, sounds very, very far away.
I'll move the microphone closer. Is that better?
It's no better.
That's odd. So I sound clear, you're saying?
You sound perfectly clear. I can hear Bob. It's just a little hard. I don't know if anybody else is online, so I can manage through it.
Okay.
I just tried boosting the audio a little bit. Can you just keep talking?
I don't know who that just said that, but that's perfectly clear, whoever that female voice was.
Can you hear me now? Is it better? Testing 1, 2, 3.
No, I think, Bob, your microphone is just not working at all.
How about this microphone?
Patty's is pretty good.
No, Patty's is not very good. I don't know why. But whoever said Patty's is good, your microphone works perfectly.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
That's much better.
Well, let's go with that. And then if you want to talk, you just punch me in.
How about testing your mic, Lucy? Can we? I just want to test
I
Lucy's
just want
mic.
to see if you can hear me. I'll be talking quite a while. Is that okay?
I can barely hear Lucy, but Brad, yours works perfectly.
Okay, let's switch.
Just leave it up here. You didn't hear that I said the people online are very
No, I think there was a joke I missed, but I only heard moments of it.
It wasn't very funny, so.
Oh, good.
So it's a little after 3, 7, it's 3 minutes after 7. It is an open public comment period before we get into the presentation. Is there anyone virtually that has anything that they'd like to say to the select board? Hearing and seeing none, I'll open it up to the floor here at the town hall. If there's anyone here that has anything they'd like to say to the select board. Not seeing anybody jump to their feet, so we'll go right to the final Middle Center Active Transportation Scoping Study presentation, followed by a question and answer period. This is designed, my understanding is that this is designed for the select board. That the select board has provided an opportunity for the public to have a public hearing for the study. And this is a conceptual final presentation, but it's possible to have it some changes, and I welcome you to come here tonight and give the final presentation to the select board. So thank you and welcome to join us tonight.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And I'm Lucy Gibson. I've been here. This is my 3rd meeting as part of this project. So great to see people showing up. And the purpose of tonight's meeting is to share the final concept plans and scoping study with the select board, with the goal of the select board adopting the study. I do want to say that that doesn't mean you're committed to doing the project that we're recommending. It doesn't mean it has to be done exactly the way that we're proposing it be done. There's certainly more information that might be gathered, and when you get into more of a final design, things might change. But the goal of the study is to develop as solid of a plan as we can based on the information we have, so you understand the costs, how the infrastructure might work, and the issues, the permits, that kind of thing, so that then you can move forward. So,
Before we get started, Lucy, can I just ask, Dan, can you see the presentation on the screen okay?
I can see the presentation and I can hear Lucy perfectly.
Okay,
Great.
Sounds good.
Good. All right, so why don't we go to the next screen? So just want to give a brief overview of the project and then really spend most of the time going through the what we're calling the preferred alternative after studying a number of different options and design variations. We are proposing what we think, based on, again, what we know and who we've talked to and the information we've gathered, of the way to move forward with the active transportation plan. So again, this is just a quick summary. This is a scoping study for active transportation, meaning walking and biking in Underhill Center. We started about a year ago and just wrapping up now. And it's sponsored by Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. Cy Sarapali is here from CCRPC, has been our contact there. And then working closely with the town. I'm from Tool Design Group, and the public's had a lot of involvement through the project, which we really appreciate. So, this did build on a local initiative. I just borrowed a slide from showing some of the, I think it was the Recreation Committee did a lot of great work to sort of tee this up and communicate the benefits of why an active transportation infrastructure would be good for Underhill Center. And project schedule, we again started late last fall and just wrapping up. This is our final meeting. Then we're submitting the plans and study for adoption by the Select Board. The purpose and need statement, this is something that we developed early on in the project to make sure we're guiding our efforts in the right direction. And I'll just read through it quickly. The study will explore the options, costs, and feasibility of active transportation infrastructure in and around the village of Underhill Center between Sand Hill Road and Mountain Road to accommodate active modes of transportation, enhance accessibility, and improve bicycle and pedestrian safety. The need is to provide a safer and more comfortable movement for people to travel by all modes of transportation throughout the study area and reinforce the town's goals of promoting active transportation. And it also will support village livability and vitality by providing safer and comfortable walking and biking for various age groups and abilities to village events, town-owned recreational areas, and the school. So the project area is quite long, going from Sand Hill Road through the village out to the Mountain Road. So we broke it up into segments, so you'll see these referred to a lot going forward. So the first segment starts west to east. It would be from Sand Hill Road to the first bridge or the Hummel Bridge. And then segment 2 goes from the bridge to Beartown Road. Segment 3, where we're in right now, goes from Beartown Road to Stevensville Road. And then 4 is relatively short from Stevensville Road up to the school. And then 5 goes from the school out to the town rec fields. So at previous meetings, we did have a lot of discussion that maybe I wanted to address a little bit here on, do we really need a sidewalk in Underhill Center? The maps you see here on the left is people walking through the village using Strava, which is one of a number of apps that people like to use to track their activity. And on the right is biking. And what you can see is there are a lot of people walking and biking through the village along the road, obviously on other roads and trails as well. But there's certainly a lot of activity that justifies providing help, providing infrastructure. We go to the next slide. Another idea that had been brought up, or we asked about at earlier meetings, but have not carried it forward, is the idea of a shared street, like could Main Street and River Road and Pleasant Valley Road just be shared with people walking and biking. And I just wanted to bring up that this is something that, sometimes that is a good solution for low traveled roads. But if you go to the next slide, I'll just point out a couple of things. One is that this is really recommended only for streets with very low traffic, about 400 cars per day. And it's also something like this is recommended for side streets, not major routes through town. So it's really, we're thinking, not the right approach. We go to the next slide. This is showing the daily traffic counts. We're well over 2,000 through the village, and then after Stevensville Road, it reduces to about 1,000 after the school. So it's really the level of traffic, that separation for people walking is really important. And then another idea was, well, can we have pedestrians sharing the streets? And I just was providing this example of that is sometimes a good solution, but it's really only safe when you have so many people walking all the time that the cars know that they are going to expect pedestrians and drive accordingly. And with the amount of pedestrian activity in Underhill Center, it's just probably never going to get to that level where that's going to be an environment that we'll have. So that was sort of teeing up what we really looked at for throughout this project area were sidewalks or shared use paths, with really looking mostly at sidewalks in the village area and shared use path options, which is a wider path that's good for biking and walking out on the segments 1 and segments 5. Just the design criteria that we look at for a sidewalk, the minimum width is 5 feet. It can go down to 4 feet in sort of pinch points, and it's desirable to have it at 6 feet if it fits, and it really allows more comfortable side-by-side walking, strollers passing each other and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the goal. A shared use path needs to be at least 8 feet wide, and a desirable, again, is 10 feet, where it allows bikes passing each other. So we looked at materials, and for sidewalks, there are 2 options. Typically would be concrete or asphalt. For curbs, we can look at granite or asphalt curbing and path surfaces. Several options: asphalt, pavement, concrete pavement, or just a gravel surface. And so if we go to the next slide, we just have our recommendations based on, both talking with people at the town and the people having to take care of it. What we're recommending is for curbing, using granite curb is wherever curb is required, is by far the most durable and will last a long time, will not need to be repaired the way asphalt curb does. So it's worth the cost when you consider that long-term maintenance. For the sidewalk surface within the village area, we'd recommend a concrete sidewalk, which is a little more formal, a little more suited to that environment. And then when we're looking at beyond the village, we'd recommend asphalt for the path that would go from the village out to Sandhill Road, which would be getting quite a bit of use. And then the segment 5 path, which would be the path from the school out to the town land, we'd propose some kind of gravel or stone dust surface that's a little more natural, and with the amount of use, probably a better, more cost-effective and appropriate for the context. So I'm putting in this chart just to show we considered a lot of different issues when we're thinking about, a big factor is which side of the street should the sidewalk or shared use paths be on. So across the top, you can see 1 north, 1 south. That means segment 1 north or south, and so on through the different segments. Things that we looked at were how many utility poles that might potentially need to be located or worked around, because that's always kind of a constraint. Number of driveway crossings, which can make project design a little more challenging. We also looked at, and the idea of the chart is red things are not so good to be avoided, green things are more favorable. We looked at destinations. You want to have the path or sidewalk on the same side as destinations to the degree possible. People can cross the street, but providing great direct connection and avoiding crossings is a good thing. And then all those features on the bottom are more some of the environmental features, like is there steep topography, potential wetlands impacts, agricultural soils impacts, and that sort of thing. So we were kind of looking for, not just blindly following the matrix, but looking at where are there the more benefits and the fewer impacts when we think about which side of the street the sidewalk or path should be on. So here's our recommendations throughout the segments. So segment 1, again, starting at Sandhill Road, we are recommending an asphalt sidewalk on the north side of the road. There will be a few retaining walls. I'll show a little more about what those might look like in a few locations, but generally a lot less environmental impacts, and it does make connections with fewer crossings for people. From the bridge to Beartown Road, we would propose a concrete sidewalk with granite curb and some drainage improvements. We're probably not necessarily having continuous curbing, but there'll be a number of areas where curbing will be needed. And then there's also some potential landscaping at the Triangle Park that would enhance hopefully what's there now. Segment 3 is Beartown Road to Stevensville Road. Would be a concrete sidewalk with granite curb, mostly on the south side, but would cross over to the north side at a location that will so eventually get kids up to the school and do have the crossing in place with good sight lines. Then from Stevensville Road up to the Underhill Center School, we'd have a sidewalk on the north side that also requires some retaining wall, but avoid some of the impacts that would happen on the south side. And then from the school out to the conserved land, it would switch back to the south side and be along the road. So we'll show all this in a little more detail. So here's just kind of an overview map of the different types of materials and generally showing where the project would go. And there would be a small extension sidewalk on Stevensville Road to get to the recreation field. So now we'll walk through. We have a set of plan sheets that are part of the report and be part of the package. So this is the first sheet of segment 1. And I know it's hard to read much from here, but you will be able to certainly take a look at when you can zoom in a little more. But that's showing the sidewalk along the north side of the road. There's a lot of notes that you'll see in the plans that are kind of notes to the next people who will pick up the project and carry it forward on kind of instructions and that kind of thing. So the one place I want to focus a little more in is where we do need a retaining wall, which is shown in that outline. So go to the next slide. So as I'm sure you all know, the contours are quite steep in some areas, and so the cross section there that we're showing is what we'd recommend for dealing with that, which would be we'd have the travel lanes slightly narrowed from what they are now to 11-foot lanes. It's not really much narrower than it is now, but that's really the minimum we can go. And then have a bank, grass bank, rising up to the sidewalk, and so that pedestrians are a little bit above the level of the road. I think there's a lot of concern about having people right along the road where now there's a lot of vegetation and lower speed. So I think the vegetated bank would keep that feeling and then also just provide a nicer experience for walking up above. And then there'd be a retaining wall on the uphill side of the pedestrians of the sidewalk. And it's a little hard to see, but this is a example of a project that's near where I live, and it really works very well, where basically the vegetated bank rises above the road. There's a black fence there. Behind that is a sidewalk, and then a retaining wall behind that you can kind of see peeking up. So now this is the second plan sheet. It gets a lot busier as we're getting to the village with a lot more things to consider and notes. So I've gotten a few spots in here that will zoom in a little bit, but this is basically going from the bridge to Beartown Road on the right side of the plans. So the bridge, what we've looked at the bridge plans and measurements and whatnot, and the two graphics there on the right show how the current bridge has travel lanes of 13 feet wide, which is quite a bit wider than necessary. And by narrowing the travel lanes to 10.5 feet wide, we can have room for a 6-foot sidewalk, which is a foot wider than the minimum of 5 feet. But we like to have a little bit more width where there's traffic moving right next to the people walking. By contrast, the travel lanes here of 10.5 feet are still wider than the other bridge, bridge number 8, that narrower bridge. So it's more than adequate for large trucks and whatnot. And what this will do is help reduce speeds coming to town, because this is something that we wanted to really reinforce as part of making it safer and more comfortable to walk. And then on the village side of the bridge, we are showing a raised crosswalk. This is not, required, but it's again something that would help reinforce lower speeds. I know you've probably seen the ones down in Jericho, and this would bring the sidewalk across right to Wells Market. And all staying right along the right of way. This is a detail of the post office down on the, The post office is there below the crosswalk, with the parking on the north side, and then I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Trying to mute. A few parking spaces on the south side of the street as well can be fit in by just along the sidewalk. And then there are a lot of driveways and curb cuts going on, so that's definitely a slightly complicated area. But basically trying to not really impacting anything that's there. And you can see another speed hump over there on the right. We're recommending several of them throughout the village as another way of just reinforcing low speeds without being too abrupt. A speed hump is something that can be plowed and not too sharp. So there was a lot of interest in thinking about integrating this triangular area that's all town owned into the sidewalk. So we just go on the next slide. We did propose a landscaping plan that kind of works in with the sidewalk, and it tries to make use of like the drainage pipe. And I don't know if that was ever a little street or anything that crosses into the park, but basically taking advantage of that. And really, there's a really nice start of some really nice landscaping. So building on that, and maybe providing more pathways and ways to enjoy the space. So this is the next plan sheet, going basically from Beartown Road out to Stevensville Road. Again, lots of notes and kind of instructions. Some drainage infrastructure will be needed in some of this, which is drawn on the plans. So if you go to the next. So this is at Beartown Road. There is a need for a pedestrian bridge, because that is where that bridge number 8, unless that's going to be replaced in the near future, and this is the kind of thing that you'll be having to consider. It doesn't seem to be in terrible shape now, so it's not imminently in need of replacement. So the idea is the sidewalk would have to bend down to clear the wing walls of the culvert and bridge structure, and then some type of pedestrian bridge. There's lots of them available. You've probably seen lots of other examples that would cross over and then wrap up to be in more line with the road. And then here's in front of the Historical Society, where the sidewalk would cross over to the north side, just this being a safer place with better sight distance, and then also extend in front of the Historical Society and down to Stevensville Road. And then the last section, it would run up to the school. And I think we have a little close-up, and it would be on the north side. A small retaining wall would be needed, and it could be a similar design for that section as well, where we have a grass bank and then a sidewalk and then a small retaining wall. It would be great to get some kind of connection all the way to the entrance to the school, because I think at this point, we're mostly been looking in the public right of way, but some coordination with the school to bring a walkway right up to the entrance would be great. And then for the next segment to get out to the town recreational field, we have the crosswalk located just to where it is because of all the utility, I think telecommunications infrastructure that's right along the road. So we're just trying to avoid any impact with that. So, and then the last segment would get to the town field, and then there's kind of interest in eventually extending that all the way up to, I guess, Casey's Hill. But that's probably, once you get this far, that might be sometime in the future, but that certainly is the long-term vision. So the other important part of the process is to develop a cost estimate, and we've done that for each segment with the idea that they can be phased in. And just a little bit of the process to do that, we have these plans laid out in a CAD, computer-aided design software, and then that allows you to calculate all the quantities of concrete, curbing, drainage pipe, all that kind of thing. So we develop the quantities of materials from that, and then we get unit costs from the Vermont Agency of Transportation to apply that to get the full construction cost. So one of the things to keep in mind is that these are prices that the Vermont Agency of Transportation pays for things. It's sometimes possible for smaller communities to get better prices with local contracts that are not going through the whole state and federal funding process, but that is the basis for it. And then we apply factors for other things. In addition to the construction, we have mobilization cost, design, survey, permitting, construction management and inspection, and then just a general contingency, knowing that we don't have all the information or all the details yet. And things often, sort of the rule of things always cost more than you expect, but to allow some buffer for that. And then beyond that, you'd want to apply an escalation for further costs. So I know none of you can read the cost estimate, but that just shows the idea of all the items and all those contingencies. On the next table is a summary of the cost estimate. So this is going to look like an awful lot of money, I know. So those are the segments going across the top, and the grand total on the bottom is the one that includes all those different items. So it's 900,000 for segment 1, a little over $1 million for segment 2, and then segments 3 and 4 are a little shorter and maybe simpler, 860,000, 616,000, and then 500,000 for the final segment. So this is going to seem like a large amount of money. It's a big project, a long time, and the goal here is to do something that will really last, be easy to maintain, and built right the first time, so you're not creating problems for the next generation. So, and it's based on what other projects have cost. So another important thing to think about is phasing. Obviously, it's not something that's going to be done at once, but based on conversations we've had and understanding of funding, we'd recommend that, because the town does have some ARPA funds available, that beginning with the segment 3, which is really right here at the town hall, right in the center of town, would be an opportunity to get things started. Once you get a more final engineer design, you can determine exactly how far that money will go. It may not go the whole segment 3, but it could get started, and those funds do need to be used by 2026. So beyond that, that would be a great start, and it would be, these projects often do take years, but the other thing to consider would be applying for the VTrans bicycle and pedestrian program, or they have other programs such as transportation alternatives and RAISE grants that are federally funded. They do require a local match, but those would be programs to really get the large amount of funding to build those more complicated segments. So probably the place to start with that would be segments 1 and 2, and then potentially 4 if you're not able to get 4 done with the ARPA funds. And the timeline for that, it takes 4 to 5 years from applying to the grant to construction, because it is and you don't need to have the match available at year 1 either. It's something that you could plan and add to it each year, and you don't really have the big bills until you're actually in construction. So there's also another funding is the recreational trail grant program, which would be for segment 5. Might be a gravel path would be a good potential source. So there is funding out there. The state does support projects like this and does provide funding. It does require a local match, and so starting to think about trying to line that up and take off manageable size pieces is the way a lot of towns get these done. So I guess this is next steps. So approval of the scoping report by the select board is something we're requesting in Chittenden County, which doesn't, again, mean obligation to build anything or build exactly what's in the report, but it's sort of concluding our study. And then construction of the portion of segment 3 as far as the funding goes, potentially next year or by 2026, and then considering applying to these funding sources. Keeping in mind they generally have a 20% local match required. And I think that's all I have for tonight. I'd love to answer any questions the board has.
Thank you. Very informative. One question I have is that one of the issues that we get into with the sidewalk in the class was the change of the height of the and when it came time to construct the sidewalk, the grades were much different, which led to issues with residents' driveways, you know, the sidewalk. And various problems associated with that being possible during the construction of the sidewalk, possible damage to foundations of things like that in the village itself. Is there any, I did look at closely and I apologize. Was there any consideration for doing a survey of residents' homes prior to the construction that's involved in the scope of this project? Is that something that's typically done by, you know, before we start into this to look to see, you know, is there potential problems that may be presented from doing construction to some of these homes? Because a lot of the homes here in the center are quite old. They're not very many that are modern, per se.
So, well, yeah, drainage is definitely a big expense. And, you know, we've done sort of the best that we can to determine, you know, kind of eyeballing it with available data. And that's what getting a topographical survey and really tightening up the design, but absolutely avoiding impacts is important. One of the parts of the report, that attachment is a historical and archaeological resource review as well, which I found really interesting. There are so many old buildings, very historic. And, you know, generally there's a lot of support by historians to make villages more vital, to keep investment, keep them, you know, vibrant and active places, which a sidewalk's compatible with, but it does have to be done carefully. So.
Anyone else on the board have any questions?
I don't remember which slide or what the title was, but it was a slide with the squares and the X's as to what some of the obstacles were in the different phases. You know, like how many utility poles and how many neighbors, residents impacted, driveways, etc. Is there a ranking as to what the biggest obstacle is? You know, and some are, you know, easy like utility poles, for example, or the more difficult ones.
I think probably the more challenging ones were like topography and then things like wetlands and agricultural soil impacts. So, for example, anything on the south side of River Road going out towards Sandhill would have environmental impacts because it would need a lot of fill and affect the drainage coming off the road. And I mean, there's drainage issues either way. So the permitting things are some of the more important things to consider. The driveways can be, I mean, they're all things that engineering can overcome many of these things, but there's sort of an obligation to reduce environmental impacts to the degree possible. So that's probably anything that would make it exorbitantly costly. So.
I'm also thinking about the slide with all the big numbers on the spreadsheet, and I'm wondering, off the top of your head, roughly, Brad, what do you remember a cost for the Underhill Flats project? And I don't know if it's comparable in terms of length, but do you know, that was a project that lasted a pretty long time.
Yeah, that was Si and I worked on that project, or I came in at the very construction phase of it, but I want to say it was around a $400,000, maybe $500,000 project, construction wise. We had a lot of money tied up in engineering and surveying and right-of-way acquisition. And going back to Bob's point for a minute, the biggest issue with the with the Underhill Flats sidewalk project was by the time we started, we were at this stage of scoping. And by the time we actually received a grant and were able to, do the surveying and the engineering, there was quite a period of time that went by between the time the surveying and engineering happened that actually that's when Route 15 got raised. The state came through and put like 6 inches more pavement on top. And in hindsight, what probably should have been done is it should have been resurveyed and the design should have been looked at again. But we didn't do that. It was right in the middle of COVID. I don't think if we were quite aware that the road was that raised that much from before. But that's another issue. Existing conditions change all the time. So you do a survey here, 10 years goes by, you go to try and put in the sidewalk and things have changed. So, but the Underhill Center is much more challenging than Route 15. That was just a straight, wider right of way, straight, easy conditions. And there was an old sidewalk there prior.
So one thing that you will want to think about too, once you have curbing, and again, we're not proposing curbing throughout, but it'll be important when you do resurface River Road or Pleasant Valley Road that it be ground down first, that you reclaim the asphalt, which is kind of recommended anyway, so that your final layer of pavement's about the same as what it is before you start. So you grind down a couple inches, something like that. And that's not always the practice. I guess Sweet Friends doesn't do that on Route 15.
Anybody else? Thank you. Anybody else on the board have any questions?
Lucy, the slides you presented, you made available so that we can.
I'll put them. So what's available on the website right now is the plan set, the 5 plan set. There's the archaeological study from UVM is on the website. And then I think the supporting reports, so the additional reports are on, and I will include a PDF of this PowerPoint presentation.
Especially the table with costs by segment is very helpful for reference as we move through this project, how we would pay for it, and just give us a rough sense of that cost.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of sense of dialogue around how we approach each segment. Appreciate that.
Yep. That's my question.
All right. Dan, any questions? You have more
No,
questions?
nothing from my side.
So go back to the sidewalk.
I appreciate the fact that the project is not seen as a whole, that we are starting the whole thing and then we are finishing it. That would be overwhelming. I like the way that you put the phases when the scoping study was designed. And we can knock off something easy because we have the funding with the ARPA funds. And residents of the town can see it. I mean, it's Exhibit A. It is finished and it will be good. So that other segments, and my understanding is that they can be separately, sought after grants for each segment, which takes a long time, and we can have them in some sort of a good order.
Yeah, I think the town's super fortunate to have the opportunity to get something going a lot more quickly than what most communities, when they get a study like this, it's a long time before you get to see things in the ground. So, and you learn a lot too. People will like some things about it, or maybe it'll precipitate some changes to the next segment.
Okay. So I think we're at the point of there aren't any more questions. Is to consider accepting this final report as presented. So it would be appropriate then the move and setting specified, so the sake of efficiency, I'll move that we accept the final report as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
After we vote on this motion, and how will the public be able to make the point, Lucy, that changes can be made, new observations can be made? I mean, we're not approving a blueprint, in other words, that we follow. How will that happen? Will that happen, not asking you necessarily, but the board, and Brad, will that happen in committee or other hearings?
Maybe your kitchen table.
Okay.
I would think if maybe Lucy would agree that, if we get started with the ARPA funds and do that, we look for grant opportunities for the other sections. But if the grant opportunity was successful, we would have surveying and design, and during that process, that's probably when a majority of the discussion would happen. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. And I think a good model that I know there's a lot of community support and interest. And so getting maybe a couple members, a small group together to work with the design engineer to, make those more fine pointed decisions that come up would be a good model so that the select board doesn't have to wade into everything, or I'm sure Brad will be very involved too,
But I wouldn't recommend any of that until you've secured a grant, though. So this is a scoping study. This is where we start. Now we have something that we can present when we apply for a grant, that we've got this study, we're well on our way. And then if a grant is successful, then we'll be at the surveying and design phase. Sai,
Can I add to that point?
come on up. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I want to add to the point, Brad, that, like as you mentioned, we need to have a grant. The town need to have a grant to move forward with other, segment 1 or segment 2 or segment 4. So there is always that 20% local match the town have to provide for securing that federal funds, like other 80%. So if the town is working towards putting together that 20%, and then when the town is ready, then they can apply for a grant. And once you secure the grant, there is another opportunity for the public. So there will be a public information meeting during the design process. So once the design starts, then they start the survey work, the actual go and in the field, and they survey the area of the project. And then they'll bring a preliminary design to the public. And at that time, there will be other opportunity for public to look at the actual design, where the exact location of the sidewalk and avoid the wear, the materials and all those stuff. So that will be another opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess I would just say, my thought would be that we would look for a diverse group of residents that would make up a community that would help guide the select board and the county with this project. I would certainly encourage, or it would be my preference to have people on the committee, not necessarily members of the center. It would have residents, from the class and Overhill end and Arizona and Pleasant Valley, so we get, more input from just people from the center. Ready for a question? All those in favor of approving the final report as presented, you signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. So we have accepted that. Thank you for your hard work. We really do appreciate that. Is there any closing? No, it's not on the agenda, but we typically have a closing public comment period, so we're going to schedule that. So, just so we don't make it sorry. Is there any closing public comment?
You'll have to come. You'll have to come up.
I just was thinking that whatever section gets done, as it gets done, I'm imagining it needs to be maintained legally with like plowing in the winter. Is that true? Is there, can that price tag be sort of worked into the engineering, what that's estimated for, so that the public knows that when we decide to approve any money to go to construction? Because it will add to the budget every year.
Sure, we can look, that's a good question. We can certainly figure out how much we're paying per foot on the existing sidewalk and kind of give the townspeople kind of an estimate of what we can do for this. We have estimate. I think we have a scout here who would like to ask a question.
I would like to be able to walk to school.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
Anyone virtually, can't see anybody virtually, but is there anyone virtually that has any solid closing comment? Or public comment? Public comment period? Do that, oh, go ahead. Sure. I don't know if we'll answer it, but you can ask a question.
I don't know if you can, but I'm just curious, there seems to be, has to probably, but a lot of crossing the road back and forth. And I know you provided for that, but is this kind of typical and is it safe? Maybe safer than what we have, but I'm just curious about that aspect. With people having to cross however many times it isn't just a mile.
So, well, if you were walking from Sandhill to the school, you would have to cross twice. And then there's a few other crossings, like to get to Moore Park and that kind of thing. And in Vermont, with our topography and houses really close, and it's not that uncommon. And that was an important part of this, is to take measures to reduce speeds so that drivers are going more slowly. They'll see people, but that's all, the speed humps and race crossings are trying to reinforce safety. But, people are safe when there's a lot of people walking. So the more people are walking, actually that makes it safer and more than avoiding crosswalks or whatnot. So.
Oh, that shouldn't be, sorry. It shouldn't be happening. Hang on here a minute. I just don't want to lose this here. Hang on a minute. I don't know why that is still sharing.
Sorry, Brett, if you're saying that something's being shared on the screen, I don't.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to, there's nothing, what does your screen look like, Dan?
I only see your audio or your video. That's it. There's nothing being shared.
Okay. So you see just the four squares here. You see us.
Correct.
Okay. So, sorry, I don't want to mess. I don't want to rock the boat at this point.
Just for the record, I'll also send a text message into this about whose microphone is working and who's not. I feel like we have some IT issues that we need to work out because people should be able to hear this. This is 2024, and we can work this out.
It could be just a loose plug or something, but.
Agreed, but it seems to be consistently not working so well.
We'll definitely look at that and do some testing before our next meeting.
I'd be happy to support that. So if you need support, Brad, just let me know and I'll come down.
I can just say, Dan, you also sound faint. So it's very possible it could be a combination situation here. But Aaron, maybe you could fill us in.
I have nothing else to offer except what Dan was saying, is that the audio is pretty lopsided. And I was thinking our test that we did at the beginning was inadequate. So definitely we need to test all the mics maybe next time. But if you wanted to stay on the call after you're done with the recording, I don't mind doing a little testing then.
Okay.
Thank you, Aaron. You came in perfectly clear.
Any other questions or comments in the virtual world? All right, well, it's Dan's favorite time of the meeting where he gets to say these magic words. Will we adjourn? Dan moved and it's seconded by Patty. It's not debatable. All those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. You may now stop recording.